Hey everyone, jumping in real quick to tell you about something I'm personally very excited for. It's Sir's Furniture. SIRRS Furniture. Now, if you've been listening to our podcast for a long time, then you know about Sir. We did the crossover with the Before Sunset trilogy. He's been on a couple of our episodes. I've been on a couple of his. He's a dear friend, and he happens to make, besides a fantastic podcast, beautiful custom made wood cutting boards of whatever flavor of wood you want in whatever kind of design you want. It's beautiful custom work. And with summertime coming up, I know that I'm going to be out barbecuing. I'm going to be out going to birthday parties. I'm going to be going to a couple of weddings. And it's sometimes hard to pick, what to give somebody, what to give a friend of mine. Sir's Furniture is your one-stop shop for cutting boards, charcuterie boards, coasters, anything that you can really think of that is handmade, handcrafted, and designed woodcraft. You've been using a small plastic board for years. You have. Or, take a look in your kitchen at those dried out twigs that you call cutting boards. And go to sirsfurniture.com, SIRRS furniture.com/NYFM and check out the wide selection of beautiful handcrafted wooden cutting boards that are on display there. Now, listen, let me tell you, a little bit ago when Mike welcomed in his third child to the world, Jesse and I banded together and we pitched in on one of the big Bertha, I think it's called the Martha, of the cutting boards. It was big, it had a nice channel around the side, and we put Mike's last name right in the middle. And this board was gorgeous. I was upset that I didn't have Mike's last name so that I couldn't just keep it for myself. It was the single most beautiful cutting board I've ever seen. So that whether you love to cook, barbecue, or just need that perfect gift, Sir has what you need. So for 10% off, use our link, Sir's Furniture. That's SIRRS furniture.com/NYFM. That'll tell him that we sent you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Father's Movies. I'm Vito.
I'm Mike.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Jesse, and we are the Dad Fathers, and we're coming at you some birthday energy all over again.
Birthdays again!
Yay!
Wait, who is it this time? Whose birthday is it this time?
It's Mike's.
It's mine.
Oh, it's so early. I feel like you just had yours like 10 months ago.
Oh, it's Vito's, guys. It's Vito's birthday.
It's Vito's birthday.
I look forward to this every year. Every year, this is one of my favorite things in the world.
Oh,
I'm so excited.
Things. Happy birthday!
Thank you.
Thank you. You thing you.
Thank you. Yes,
These are some of your favorite things.
It is. Here.
This is cheers.
Cheers. There for the microphone.
Oh, I guess here we can.
Another journey around the sun. Have we grown any wiser as we've grown older, Vito?
Actually, yes.
Oh, really?
And I'd like to cover that in this episode.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
Because I had originally when I conceived of this, it looked a lot different. So for this episode, we are doing The Thing from 1982, the John Carpenter classic, and then the prequel to that movie, which came out in 2011. I had originally conceived of
Called
this.
The Thing.
It's also called The Thing. Really? And the poster is the same. The font's the same. I have both of them on Blu-ray. I could show you guys a side-by-side comparison. It looks the same. You cannot tell from the spine which one is which. Really bad marketing flaw. Originally, the idea for this episode was like a great example of practical effects and a great example of computer-generated effects. Because I remembered The Thing from 2011 as being pretty good. And I was like, why does this get so much hatred? But in my years as I've grown, I sat down to watch this. I was kind of excited to revisit it. I was like, man, I can't wait to be right about this. I watched it. I was like, holy shit, this is bad. This is really not good. I can't imagine why I ever thought this was good. Who was I? So yes, Mike, I have grown.
You've grown. You've changed.
I've changed. I've morphed.
You've taken in maybe some other
I've absorbed a dog.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You're really a dog.
Exactly.
I do need to ask, like, when you first saw The Thing 2011, was it like a 4-star movie for you? 4.5 star?
It was a 3.5 because I had so much reverence for The Thing.
Okay.
I'm trying to think back as to what it was that I really liked about it. And I think it really came down to just the Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Joel Egerton aspect of this. I thought that they were really, I still think they are really good in the movie. I just think that I overemphasized how good they were before. It is not good enough to carry this thing. But anyway, this is 2 Thing movies, the original horror classic and its prequel. And for my birthday episode, I wanted to talk about the movie itself of The Thing from 1982, one of my all-time favorite movies. But I also wanted to talk about something I'm very passionate about, which is CGI versus practical effects. And I'd like to get into that in this episode. And I hope that listeners have some opinions on this too. Maybe not about these movies, but about some other things they've seen. I mean, we could talk. An alternate version of this episode could have been like any Jurassic World movie versus the original Jurassic Park, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. That could have been almost the exact same thing. It actually would have been weirdly reminiscent of this episode because both Jurassic Park and The Thing were shot by Dean Cundey, one of the master cinematographers.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
that is fascinating. Or you could do like the original Star Wars versus like the prequels.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Anytime that we have the sequel for a movie from long ago, they seek to update it, with current technology, and it doesn't.
Well, we'd have to really dig back through Star Wars, then get back to when George Lucas had not touched it, and then we could talk about that.
The original VHS.
Just need to hunt down the VHS, and then we'd be good.
Exactly, and then a VHS player. I was at the thrift store. Oh, sorry. Sidebar. I was at the thrift store today.
Of course,
I saw an enormous amount of VHS players. So many VHS players. Do you know if they test those before they sell them, or do they just sell them?
Well, first of all, I can't get over the fact that you're calling it a VHS player. It's a VCR. That I actually made the same mistake, and my older brother pounded me for it. So
VCR, asshole.
Yeah, he was like, as if I'd made a crime against the 90s or something. But yeah, so just throwing that out there.
I mean, because I wasn't praising it for its video cassette recording capabilities, more about its playing capabilities. I was really focusing on there.
You're making a distinction. Okay.
I was. Hang on just a second. I'm leaking blood from my nose.
Oh.
Here, hang on just a second. Sorry.
I think he's the Thing.
I am the Thing. I'm thinging out.
Test the blood. Test the blood.
I'm a little too excited about the things. So what is this?
So that's just lemon juice.
Oh.
Did you drink it?
No. I've been sitting here looking at this being like, Dan made a very small drink with yellow ice cubes. I don't know what to think of this.
Yeah, never eat the yellow snow. It's so we have the orange groves that have lemon trees, and I crush them up.
Oh my goodness.
Or I juice a bunch, and then I freeze them in ice cubes.
Okay.
And then use it for ice or for lemonade. And
okay, so you've been whiskey. It's a whiskey sour.
It's a whiskey sour. That's what
okay. That makes sense.
So if you add some whiskey, it'll be a whiskey sour, not just lemon juice.
Awesome.
All right, you all right there?
I'm good.
Earlier, I punched him in the face.
Yeah, like a few years ago. Still recovering. I don't know. Should I just keep that in?
I guess so.
We tied it in with the Thing. So
yeah. Whatever.
Where are we at?
Oh, one thing. Another reason we're doing the Thing, right? 40th anniversary of the Thing. That's a big reason that made sense to be done right now. And Vito, you shared the Slash Filmcast with their interview of John Carpenter, and that was just awesome to listen to him actually talk about his movie.
Yeah.
I love really enjoyed that.
It was the big picture.
I'm sorry, the big picture. Yeah.
It's okay, but the what I love about that interview with John Carpenter is it exposes he's such an unfussy guy, right? Like there's a reason that his movies are so kind of lean and simple. It's because he's a pretty lean, simple guy when he talks about stuff. He doesn't have a lot of room. Like Sean asked him, one of the questions he asked him was like, do you think, because The Thing is, of course, a legendary bomb, and both critically and financially. Like at the time, if you look at some of the headlines, people are like, is this the most hated film of all time? People hated this movie.
Really?
Yeah. It has probably one of the furthest like 180-degree critical reevaluations in its lifetime. And but one of the questions Sean asked John Carpenter was like, if this movie had done well, do you think you'd have had a better career? And he said, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It was a real like whiff of a question where he's like, I'm not really interested in hypotheticals. Like it just didn't do well, but I still am proud of my movie. I love that about him though. Or like how Sean points out, like he's like, your movies are pretty pessimistic. And John Carpenter's like, yeah, but I'm an optimist at heart. He goes, wait, whoa, how are you an optimist? Like you're the biggest cynic about like pop culture that there maybe has been in the last 40 years. And he's like, oh, I don't see it that way. Just telling stories. Like,
could you refresh my mind on what else John Carpenter has done?
Sure. He came out big splash with Halloween. He is the father of the Halloween franchise. Came up with Michael Myers, The Shape. But he's also done The Fog, They Live. I think I shouted it out on our end of the year episode as a hidden gem. Is The Thing is actually in a trilogy. It's called the Apocalypse Trilogy of 3 movies that are all inspired by Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft, the famous horror writer. It's The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. He's also done stuff like Vampires. He's done Big Trouble in Little China, which I just recently saw for the first time like a week ago. He is the Christine. He is the 80s horror film director. So when you see stuff, listeners, when you see stuff like Stranger Things, you see the neon and the fog and the synth music. All of that is John Carpenter. Every single frame of that is a John Carpenter thing. Because he is known as like a one-man team. He produces, he writes, he directs, he does his own music for things. Often he serves as his own editor. He is a single creative force. And even now, in his 80s, he is doing the music for the new Halloween movies that David Gordon Green has been producing. Yeah.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
They called him in to do the score because he did the score in the original Halloween. He came up with that really haunting theme, which again...
I've never actually seen the original Halloween.
It's so good.
Can you believe that?
It's so good. I know, for you I do.
Yeah.
I believe you. It's an old horror movie. You didn't see it. I get it. But that's a big favorite of mine. And actually, would you guys mind if I talked a little bit about my nostalgia for this thing?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't mind.
So this is, The Thing is also one of my dad's favorite movies. This is one of the big movies that me and my dad watched together. And I remember being probably 15, 16 years old. And we'd seen some like fun, gross out sci-fi stuff. Like I think I've mentioned Tremors before that we'd watched. We'd also watched the Terminator 2. But this one was really weird because we sat down to watch it. And you think about the Terminator 2, Tremors, like these are fun kinds of movies. They're a little schlocky, like the first Terminator especially. And this is gross and really intense and very dark.
Yeah.
I remember being so in love with this. I think we watched it in the dead of winter in Wyoming. So there was like a blizzard outside. I had a beautiful German Shepherd at the time. And so the dog stuff really hit home as well. This movie birthed my love for practical effects like this with the combination of the Terminator, Tremors, and watching the original Night of the Living Dead with my dad too this is where that seed of love that people like the Duffer Brothers, again, for Stranger Things, really had as well. This is a big, big deal movie for me and is one of my favorite movies to this day. And I can't help but think of my dad every time I sit down to watch this movie. It's weirdly like a blanket of comfort for me. Like it's gross and nasty and mean and scary, but I'm still like, come here, you little thing, you.
That's right. You can't trust anybody.
Exactly.
That makes me feel so safe.
Exactly. Dad was right. The world is full of bastards. You become things. So I've loved it for forever. And my nostalgia for The Thing 2011 was that I saw it once. I thought it was pretty good, and I watched it again. I know it's terrible, and now I have a Blu-ray copy of it.
Nice.
And I need to get rid of it somehow.
I don't think anybody's taking that off your hands.
No, it was really hard to get.
Oh no!
It was hard to find a retailer.
The Blu-ray manufacturer was like, someone wants The Thing from 2011 on Blu-ray.
They go back to the warehouse like,
does anyone have this?
Guys, somebody wants it.
No, we burned all the copies out back. Like, we hate that movie.
With the gas, they dug a hole and they burned it.
They dug a hole in the snow and burned it. Yeah.
Exactly. But that's kind of my nostalgia, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. And as we move forward in this episode, I just want to ask you guys, like I don't know, Jesse, where did you come at The Thing in 1982 and The Thing 2011 from at first?
So I realized when I was watching The Thing 1982 that I've never seen The Thing 1982. I was thinking of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which, yeah.
Easy mistake to make.
You know, yeah, so I was like, oh, yeah, I've seen this movie before. Oh, this is very different. This is very different. So, yeah, never seen it. So this is like a...
Are you referring to the Invasion of the Body Snatchers from the 50s or the 70s?
Definitely.
Donald Sutherland?
Like, I think I've seen parts of the 70s and then definitely the 50s.
Okay.
But I still thought that... I actually thought this was going to be a black and white movie for some reason.
Okay.
So, yeah, I really did envision this as a 1950s Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So, never seen it. Coming out this, like, completely fresh. Same thing with The Thing 2011. Saw The Thing 2011 after the 1982. And
oh, thank God. Okay, good.
I knew better. Because I was sitting there wondering, like, this doesn't look familiar. Like, maybe I need to watch this first, just in case. And it was the best decision I've made all week, for sure. And, yeah, I like, kind of liked it. But then after watching The Thing 2011, I ended up really liking the original Thing. Because The Thing 2011, there was so much that I didn't like. It's like, oh, you know, The Thing 1982, they did a lot of really cool things there. There's a lot of really cool things. And then I was able to appreciate it more because of the absence of greatness that I found in The Thing 2011. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Nice. I actually just to add onto your point too is I remember the first time I saw The Thing 1982, I was a little I was left pretty cold by the ending. So I didn't love it at first. It definitely was one that had to grow. So I also had the same kind of reaction where like this thing had to morph inside of me before I exploded in Thing glory.
Things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely think if I was 15, 16 and I saw the original Thing, it would have probably messed me up quite a bit. Just the grotesqueness of it. I think one of the most violent movies I saw at that age was like the first Kill Bill. And I thought it was, and it is insanely violent. But I was not used to seeing that kind of like, just here's the violence. It's not, it's not a shadow of the violence. It's not turning away at the last second. It's just there. So I definitely think that at a younger age, this would have probably scarred me to a certain extent. But I didn't see the original Thing until I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. I had heard so much about it. I had, listened to podcasters talk about it and, YouTube videos that would do deep dives into it. And I was like, I just need to dive in and like experience this. So I watched it 4 or 5 years ago and I had mixed feelings about it. I was still kind of like hit by the grossness of it. It's definitely like, that's a huge part of the movie, right? Is how gross is this monster that it's trying to gross you out. And, it continues to gross me out. Like every time I just watched it for, I think the third time this last week. And every scene just grossed me out. And, I don't know that that'll ever go away and like that kind of speaks to how gross it is that it's not one that you're like, oh, I know what's coming. It's still like grosser than you remember it was, from the last time you saw it. So that was always kind of, like taking away a little bit from my enjoyment of it. I love Kurt Russell and I love the performances and the drama and, the setting of it is awesome. And it's like a play where every character is kind of equally important. And I love that about it. And there's so much incredibly great 80s dialogue that I absolutely love.
When the thing roars at Kurt Russell and he just goes, "Ah, you too."
That was great.
Oh yeah, or when the head's crawling away and he's like, "You gotta be kidding me!"
Love it.
Or the guy just wants to be untied from the couch. You're gonna leave me tied to this couch all winter.
Yeah, so I had not watched what I thought was a remake. So that was something that honestly, I will never know how much this impacted my watching of the 2011 one, but I had been told it was a remake. And so I went into it just like, okay, let's see what they did the same. Let's see what they did different. And it starts off right with the Norwegians. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of a cool, they're showing a little bit more what happened with the Norwegians. And then like the whole movie was with the Norwegians, but there were Americans in it. So I was like, they're kind of like combining the two camps, which is cool. Like I was down for it. I'm like, this is okay. This is a cool twist on it. And then like, it actually wasn't until the Thing was doing the merge with the other guy and the two faces were joining. And I was like,
yeah,
this is setting up for the next one. Oh my gosh. And I'm not going to lie. I actually, once I realized that it was a prequel, I kind of dug it. I was like, this is actually cool. This is a very cool way of doing a like kind of homage to the original, is to set it up this way to kind of explain everything that they saw in the Norwegian camp.
It's like what every Thing fan wanted, you know? It's like what every Star Wars fan wanted. Like, why is Han's name Solo? You know? And I was just so happy when I finally got that answer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Being incredibly
okay. I mean, you're being sarcastic. I know. But I do think that there's like a place for that. I think like this director of The Thing 2011, he clearly adores John Carpenter's The Thing. Like he loves it. He's not just like, I think this was, I don't know. I like to think this was before the time of the cheap fan service. Like I understand it could be taken that way. I felt like it was a genuine effort to pay homage to the movie. But anyways, so I watched the 2011 one, and once I realized it was a prequel, I kind of loved it, and I was like, yeah, there are plenty of things I don't like about this. Definitely the CGI was a huge miss for them, and they actually I found out that they actually did a lot of the stuff practically and just thought that it looked too 80s, which is so weird to me that you like, why would you not think that was a good thing if you were trying to do a kind of semi remake / prequel?
Both?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's videos of the 2011 shots with practical effects, and it looks great. It looks so good. And then they layered over with CGI. It was an afterthought by the studios. And
such a bummer.
Yeah, like definitely look into it. I
would have liked this a lot more.
Yeah, I think everybody would have, because like, who are they actually pleasing? It's the people that love the original. So
I like that the studio's like, let's mess with this prequel to a movie that's like 30 years old, and the budget for this movie is only $38 million. Let's mess with it. Let's touch it. And then, of course, they scare it to a box office of $31.5 million.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, where are you coming at this from?
So I did not remember this when I started watching it, but as soon as it started, I was like, I have seen this movie before.
Nice.
And there was this weird like period in my life when I was like 15 or something with my mom and my sister, where we started watching some old movies, and my mom was like, you know what we should watch? We should watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And we did. It was awesome. It was, what was that?
The 50s
one?
one?
The 50s one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I thought it was incredible. And it blew my mind. We watched a few other like creepy movies, and she's like, you know, they made like a remake of this sometime in the 70s or the 80s called The Thing. We should watch that too. I remember really loving it, is what my mom said. And so we watched this movie, and it blew my mind that my mom had ever watched this movie and liked it as well. Not just watched it, but liked it. And at the end of it, I just it blew my mind. It was incredible. I was like, holy shit, like this is a movie? Like you can make things like this? And it did again when I watched it recently. one of those movies where you're like, I cannot believe that someone could make this. Like this is incredible. What an amazing thing. But mostly my takeaway was sort of like I looked at my mom with like new eyes. Like, who is this
You're
person?
so cool.
She's the one who has morphed into something new, by our watching of it. That's my memory of it. I remember just like being blown away. And my sister, this was like the movie that stopped that whole thing. She was like, I'm not watching anything like this ever again in my life. And my mom was like, oh, okay. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
So
end of an era.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my only nostalgia for The Thing. I didn't watch The Thing 2011 until this week. It was fine. I didn't hate it. I thought it was kind of interesting or whatever. And like you said, Dan, I was like weighing in my mind, like I didn't realize it was a prequel, just like you. And I realized it a little bit earlier, I think, but I was weighing like the whole time. Like, is this just fan service? Is this, Pirates of the Caribbean 5 or whatever, when we find out how Jack Sparrow got his hat and shit? Mm-hmm. I don't think so. I think you're right. I think it was like, this is someone who loves the movie, the original movie, and was like, oh, let's see what happened beforehand. And it gets a little out of hand. Which,
but by the time,
maybe is something we could learn from.
By the time we got Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Joel Egerton sprinting along the top of the alien ship as it starts to turn on, I was like, all right, we have officially, we're in the weeds here. Yeah, what are we doing?
Like, everyone's supposed to die. Like, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering the whole time, like, who...
Part.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to be is it going to end up that Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Joel Egerton are, like, the guys in the helicopter? And, like, so is the end of their story just blowing up by mistake?
Right.
Like, that's a really bummer ending.
And so instead, they choose.
But it seems like this is
they choose the
victorious.
no balls approach, and they're like, we'll just close on her living.
Yeah.
She probably didn't live past that. We're going to close on just her and the other one, the other snowplow.
Yeah. She's victorious. Hooray!
Yeah. All right. I think now is as good a time as any for me to say like what I didn't like about the 2011 that made me appreciate the first one more.
Yeah.
Sure.
And one of the key parts was the way the thing works. Like the way the thing works in the 80s version is it's really slow to morph into something. So it's got like a huge weakness, which is a flaw in the film at the end because it suddenly doesn't. But they do that for like the ultimate climax, basically. And I can forgive a movie for breaking a rule for if you're going to do something cool like that. But the whole time, the thing just wants to get in a one-on-one situation because it's kind of weak and it can't do that much. And it's going to be killed or burned if it's ever in a huge crowd. Whereas the Thing 2011, it's like, I don't know why you're not just slaughtering everybody around. Like you were uber powerful. Like
powerful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, way too powerful. And it made me realize that the presence of the Thing in the 80s version was like very tense because you knew, because it seems like it's trying to finagle a way to get into like a one-on-one situation with everybody. And that was, and that creates just such a stressful environment.
And it's like such a gradual process for the Thing to replicate the DNA. Like he needs a couple hours of uninterrupted gross time of like tubes and tentacles, right? For it to work. And that's what's so great about he is a very, very, very strong adversary because he can copy so perfectly. But his weaknesses are fire and slow.
Yeah.
But that means that he can actually be defeated. Yeah. At least like when he's not just a cell.
Exactly.
Like but yeah, like you said, Jesse, by the end of the Thing, you're like, well, this is just the Thing 2011. Yeah. Like this is just a superpowered creature. Like, what are its motivations?
Like when Joel Egerton
for causing horror.
When there's the break room scene, right? And the arms split off from the guy.
Yeah.
And they're super fast.
Yeah.
And then he like uses the axe and cuts one in half and it doesn't matter. And then the movie goes out of its way to show you how the two knit back together. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all. It should just be two pieces now.
Yeah.
Like a worm.
Yeah.
Like what are we like it should be even more dangerous because now it's so fast and it's so strong. It's like barreling through walls and shit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I'm taking over your point. I'm sorry.
And then it becomes a creature movie, like halfway through when it's like the two-headed thing chasing everybody. It's like, oh, well, we suddenly like threw the psychological aspect out the window, which again was another great part of the 1980s. That's why I'm here. Like, who is the thing? And they just kind of like, I guess this guy is the thing. Like, yeah, everybody knows. And then
the least likable person, he's definitely the thing.
and then another, like, I think this is probably a smaller thing, but in the 80s version, like, everybody has something to them, like something small. Like, there's a guy with roller skates who, you know, plays music really loud. And then there's, you know, Childs who's just like kind of angry and like kind of paranoid. And then there's a guy with the headphones always talking to people. And then there's a couple commander guys. There's a scientist. Like, there's something small that distinguishes every single character in the 80s version, that makes you remember, like, oh, okay, that guy was at that place at that time with that other guy with the beard. So, like, he could have been infected at that time. Whereas, like, in the 2011, everybody felt really flat for me and kind of, like, merged into...
All the Norwegians all were, like, the same, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they kept pointing to Peter! And also it's funny his name is Peter. And then there's, like, Lars, and then other Norwegian guy. And I was like, wait, which one are you? And then I couldn't remember who the one we're not supposed to like is. And what I liked about so much about the original thing is that these guys, they are making these choices that are pretty logical. Everyone has like their own point of view that they're all going for 100%. And you have this clash of personalities. And the new one, they're just like, shut up, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. You're saying the most cogent, logical things in the world that should be blatantly obvious to anyone. How about you just shut up and we're going to keep doing what we're doing? And then she's like, no, stop it. They're like, shut up, though. Like, you're making sense. We didn't ask you to make sense, lady. It really got to the point where I was watching. It's like, these characters are blatantly stupid in a way that they were not stupid in the other thing.
Absolutely.
And even when they acted kind of dumb in the other thing, there's always that thing where you're going like, well, maybe they're a thing, right? Maybe that's why they're acting in this way. You never knew. That's what I really liked. And that's what I also found wanting in the prequel was there just seemed to be a lot of dumb decisions made so that events in the plot would continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I definitely think I did enjoy it up until the UFO. Like, I was still able to say like, oh, this is very different and not as good, but I'm still enjoying what I'm seeing. But then when the UFO comes around, I think that's when I stopped caring.
So was the only reason that they brought in the UFO, like them being down there, was to explain how it was uncovered from the ice? Was that what they were trying to explain?
I guess.
Because it, like, at the end, it, like, tried to lift off and then it, like, blows up. And, like, in the 1982 one, they can see the entire spaceship right from the ground. So it's, like, clearly something happened to clear out all of the snow, and I guess they couldn't think of a way that the Norwegians would have done that, like just uncovered it all or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like with shovels.
And also to get the protagonist away and not have to kill her off.
You know what I thought was really baffling is how they got the guy who we don't like, the real asshole of the group, Sander, right?
The scientist that brings him down there.
And he turns into a thing monster, and then the thing monster, instead of continuing to use his body, it fully things out, right?
Yeah.
But it still keeps his face in the middle. But then the moment that Mary Elizabeth Winstead comes along, it stops using the face.
The face just goes, brah, like it's actually on the mouth.
It opens in like a weird like mouth, vagina, teeth thing that's like this. Huh. But I'm still going like, why were you using the face? Like, you clearly don't need eyes.
Yeah.
You're seeing with something else, but you chose to thing out and keep the face in the middle. Like, is this like a weird fashion choice for you thing? You didn't want to show up amongst your other things without a human face at your center?
I think there's a lot of like illogic. Like, it's like, oh well, maybe it's a psychological. Like, it just doesn't.
It was alone.
Okay, but there are things that you can nitpick about the original, right? When the doctor goes and to shock him and gets his arms bitten off, that iconic scene, and then the thing comes out and it has a head. That's like a second head, and
awesome.
It's awesome, right? We love it because it looks so good, like from a gross perspective, but it's still like, wait, the head's right there. Like, why were you making another head in his stomach?
It's because that thing is operating like the thing should, which is that it's not interested in being one corporeal form. It's interested in splitting off like a virus, right? Like that's why the head immediately separates from the body to run away. That's why like the different parts are doing different things, is because it's not really a unified whole. It's a bunch of little things, right, that are working together in a big thing, and then each time it becomes discrete. That's a new thing, you know. It's splitting off into pieces like a cancer, in ways that are not necessarily logical. But what is logical is that it's just trying to splinter off and get away, right? Let's save some part of me. As opposed to the other thing in the 2011, which is actually interested in becoming more unified all the time. It wants to get bigger for some reason so as to be more noticeable, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like they took the concept from the 80s version at the very end when it does become a giant, big, mega thing, which to me does still like break the rules for how the thing had been operating up to that point. But again, I forgive it because I think that's kind of a big, cool scene.
I want you to finish your point, but I have a question about
movie. They make that the entire movie in 2011. It's like, it's always able to combine, always able to be bigger.
I think the reasoning behind why the thing becomes a mega thing at the end of the 1982 movie is because it knows now that it can't sneak around. Like, it knows that it's done sneaking. The time for hiding is over. There's no possible way it can bamboozle anyone in this circumstance. And so it feels like it has to go big and go loud. It feels like, all right, I have to fight for my life here. And so it's not about, but it's still trying to do some insidious stuff, which is why we have the ending, right? You don't know if Childs or McCready was infected at some point. So it's still playing a shadow game, but it's also like trying to do a big, heavy resistance. Like, I tried to get out. Wilford Brimley's character almost built that spaceship to fly away. Like, it's working on so many individual plans. They all get shut down at once. And so I think it feels like it has to go on the offensive. That's why I don't think it really breaks its rules. I think it's surviving in a different way than we've seen it survive thus far. That's what I think.
But then it also leads to, like, if it could go that big, like, why wasn't it doing that for, like, most of the time, just, like, causing havoc?
Well, it was outnumbered, or it had more adversaries than it could. I think that's...
If it's able to, like, if it's able to go all Bugs Bunny and make, like, the floorboards and the floor, like, you know, pop up and stuff, like, why? It could have done that before.
No, because it was combining multiple pieces of people and animals, right? That's how it got that final form of like the weird like thing on the side of the guy's head with the mouth. Like, it was combining matter, because that's the thing about the thing is it seems like it's twisting matter that it's given. It can't make new matter. It's just like pulling it together in different pieces. So at the end, it has a ton of different matter because it's connected to a ton of different people or things. That enable it to do this, and it wouldn't want to do it at the first place because it's way harder. This is way harder.
So that makes sense. So at the end, it's one person, the doctor. It takes control of two more people. It gets that mass, and it's able to do weird things with it. Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's got the cells, and it didn't have the cells at first, right? It was weak. It was little. That's why it has to work its way up from like dogs to dog monster.
At least that's cohesive in some way.
There's rudimentary math that you can do, I think, is all the movie's trying to show you.
I will say the one thing you mentioned earlier, Vito, about it like blasting through the roof and then blasting through walls occasionally, that did annoy me because I was like, this was like before in the original, it felt confined. It felt like you could trap it in a room. It felt like there were ways that you could like, you know, contain this thing. And in this one, it's kind of randomly extremely strong or insanely, you know, agile. Mm-hmm. And then other times it's just kind of sitting there. And it was like, it was random. It felt very random and according to what the plot needed to do. Like
when the Two-Face monster comes into being, right? When the one monster, like takes like 10 seconds, but then the other guy who gets the arm on his face, like the face hugger, he just sits there for the entirety of the encounter and then just gets burned at the end.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to tell me that it takes a little bit to absorb, I understand that, but then how did this guy like just meld two people instantly and then runs away as like a man spider, which is like a cool visual,
But also, I thought that was lame because my vision of the first one was like, oh, it was trying to morph into somebody else at the same time.
Yeah.
And it got caught.
And they burned it in like mid transition, not like it was a 2-headed monster.
right.
Yeah.
Right. That just almost seems like if we're talking about it, if the thing. So obviously in 1982, John Carpenter could never have meant to have this be an allegory for AIDS, right? Which it can be read as. It can also be read as an allegory for like, communism or whatever.
Yeah.
But if it's going to act like a cancer or a virus or a disease, something really strong, then it's about advantage. It's about survival. It's not about flashiness or planning ahead. This is the second by second decisions this thing is making. It has an intelligence, but it's a feral kind of intelligence, right? Like a disease. And I think that is forgotten in the 2011 one, where it's like, I am now a man spider. And like, that's the least useful thing you could be. Like, why aren't you a dog spider? That would be better. You would be stronger and have teeth. Why are you a man spider? I don't understand. Or like the lady whose chest turns into the jaws. I don't understand. The internal logic of that 2011 one really breaks down for me. I'm sorry. It is fun. I will admit it is fun in its beginnings.
Also, the helicopter crash like really got me in the 2011. Or you know what? I'm going to stop bashing the 2011. But like the fact that the two people that weren't things survived and the thing doesn't survive, that doesn't happen.
Exactly. Like, oh, they both weren't things? What?
Wait a second.
Something really special I did want to mention about the original thing that before we kind of get into talking about a few other things, but is that Rob Bottin, who is this legendary special effects guy.
Okay.
He's I'm actually going to pull up his IMDb really quick while we're talking. But this was one of his first projects. He was 21 and 22 years old when he created all these creatures.
That's incredible.
John Carpenter talks about how he just didn't sleep, and you could go into the workshop at almost any time of day or night, and he would just be in there working on some aspect of this creature design. He said they came up with so many different creatures they never used. And he's in there, physically putting together epoxy and putties and different plastics and spray painting, trying to get these effects and using tubes. And like, how are we going to do like in the really horrifying dog sequence? How are we going to do the tentacles that are going to shoot out from one dog into the other dog? How am I going to build that? And it's incredible stuff. So he's also worked on RoboCop, Total Recall, Seven. He's done stuff for even like Mr. Deeds and Fight Club. He's worked on Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Mission Impossible, Basic Instinct, Inner Space, The Witches of Eastwick, The Fog, Piranha. Like he's been around. He even worked on the original Star Wars as an assistant makeup artist. He's a really incredible dude, Rob Bottin. His last credit is an uncredited special makeups effect on a Game of Thrones episode. Don't know where he's been. I just love the kind of garage aspect of this. Like, you're 21 years old, and John Carpenter comes to you, who's like this up and coming celebrated horror director, and he's like, "I'm making a movie. It's called The Thing. Can you make some creatures?" What kind of creatures, John?
They gotta be gross.
Yeah, gross creatures.
Just gross.
Drippy creatures. Slidey creatures. And you're like, all right.
We need
enough.
some amniotic sacs going on. Definitely some of that.
Claws. Yeah.
I have no idea how they did some of the scenes. Like, just throwing that out there, there are parts where things look alive, and I'm like, is it puppetry? Is it like sped up? I just have no idea. And I'm sure somewhere there's a wiki that would explain it to me, but I think that's part of the magic of it is like...
Actually, no. There are some things that are more explainable, but every effect has not been explained. It's not as if it's impossible to imagine how it was done. But a lot of it really is in the minds of the creative team. You know, this isn't really like a magician's trick where you can get another magician that can come on and tell you how he did it. People can't really tell you how this stuff happened, how he did this stuff. This young genius, like, and I think that's what's so exciting about it is that you can't really explain it. How did you do that? I mean, like, you can see the easiest probably effect to explain is when the head like leaves, right? And you see like the little rubber feet on the side, but it's clearly like on like a little RC car or something.
Yeah.
It's like, and I love the little sound effects when it gets burnt. But there's other stuff like the lengthening of the neck and the head slowly sliding. How did they do that? And like you see the little tendrils breaking and the goo shooting out. Like that's so intricate. It's the stuff I geek out. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm sorry.
No, keep going. That's exactly
it's like some sort of putty. Like, you know how like
I don't know. If you asked me to do it, I couldn't do it. Not possible. Maybe we can talk about. So I think we've compared and contrasted enough. I don't want to beat up on director Matthias von Heijnigen Jr. I cannot say his name. I don't want to beat up.
I think
on
it was
his
a good
work.
try, though.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
The 2011 one is really interesting because it's written by Eric Serrer, who is also Academy Award nominated screenplay writer for Arrival. So maybe he just had to get out his yips on an alien and Arrival movie that was about hostile aliens before he could do a different one. And I mean, obviously, the original one stars Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, Keith David in his first film appearance. Actually, he was a Broadway actor.
Wait, which one's Keith David?
The really angry one that ends up at the end with Kurt Russell.
Oh, yeah, right.
We mentioned the cinematography by Childs. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Also, we mentioned the cinematography by Dean Cundy, masterful cinematographer, but also music by Ennio Morricone, the legendary Ennio Morricone, who has composed some of the most legendary
compositions
that we have in film, right? One of your favorite movies, Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like all of he does like spaghetti westerns and that sort of thing. And also
The Mission.
Yeah.
The Untouchables.
Yeah.
He's incredible. And I like, though, that if you listen to the theme and then you go look back and listen to any of John Carpenter's music, it's very clear that Ennio Morricone just listened to John Carpenter's music and then just copied it.
Well, I think they said in the Big Picture podcast that he actually Ennio Morricone wrote a bunch of different types of music and offered it to John Carpenter, kind of, which of these would you prefer? And he picked the one that sounded most like his other stuff.
Yeah. His only note to Ennio Morricone was less notes.
Less notes.
That's awesome.
Like the theme. Boom, boom. Boom, boom.
It's awesome.
There was probably one.
I was reading. I think it's interesting. I was reading something comparing this to like a spaghetti western. Like there is like a western sort of quality to this, but like western in the 80s or something with, the
hard Scrabble guys like facing down impossible odds.
Yeah, and he's a helicopter pilot. It's like
he's got a cowboy hat.
He's got a cowboy hat. He's drinking whiskey. He's like, don't fuck with me. Like, I can do anything.
The only female voice heard in the film is the voice of the chess computer at the beginning that he dumps whiskey in.
Like, I'm done with this shit. Forever. Like, it's the first week of winter. I'm done with my only entertainment.
It's like his first drink of the season. And he's like, that's enough.
This is
cheating, bitch. Also, that voice was the voice of Adrienne Barbeau, who was John Carpenter's wife at the time.
Have we ever had Kurt Russell on the show before?
I do not believe that.
No.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he shows up there. Man, I love Kurt Russell. Like, I don't necessarily go out and seek his films, but every time he's in there, I'm like, this is going to be a great time. I'm going to enjoy this guy.
I think I love Kurt Russell movies prior to like 2008. I think that's my cutoff. And that now I'm like, you're Santa Claus in the Christmas Chronicles. I'm not watching that,
See, I won't watch it, but if I see him in it, I'll be like, Kurt Russell, yeah.
Yeah, we did Tombstone too, guys.
And Tombstone.
Come on.
Tombstone. I'm sorry, we did forget Tombstone.
Oh, yeah. What are we saying? We totally had Kurt Russell.
He's fantastic. Wilford Brimley is great. This is actually written by Bill Lancaster, who's Burt Lancaster's son, who died at the age of 49 way back when, way too young. He was also known for writing the Bad News Bears. And this is based on the short story Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr., which has been re-optioned by Blumhouse Productions as of 2020. So we might be seeing another one of these thingies coming down the pipeline at some point.
Sorry, what does that mean, re-optioned? Does that mean that they like took some sort of license out for it?
Yeah, when you option it means that you're optioning it with the intent of making something based on it.
Okay.
And this Who Goes There story is also the basis for Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's also both of those, the Howard Hawks and then the 1970s one with Donald Sutherland. It's also the basis for another one that kind of came out. This is a pretty popular idea, but most of it's linked back to this one short story.
Isn't there a movie that John Carpenter mentioned about? It's called like The Thing Who
From Another Planet.
From Another Planet.
Right.
Yeah. Is that in the similar vein?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. To wrap up our discussion about these two things, I want to ask a general question, and maybe we can just go around the horn here. So, again, this was intentioned a different way, but it's unintentionally turned into a really interesting contrast between the use of CGI, computer-generated images, and practical effects. If we can just talk real quick about what is the charm of practical effects? Do they have a place in our modern world? And kind of what is it that CGI can give us, and maybe what is it lacking? Because I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm not gonna be like, well, things were better when it was all practical effects. No, it wasn't. It was much harder. It was much harder to do. For every one thing, you just had the one thing. Now you can do 30 different things, and some of them can be really great. But before, you had to rely on like the creative genius of one dude and his collaborators to be able to do this. And now you have effects houses that can do all sorts of wonderful, amazing things. So it's not better now. It's not worse now. It's not better then or worse then. I just want to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each. Jesse, you've been quiet for a little bit. What do you think?
I guess the strengths of practical effects are, I think they're mainly tied to how the actors interact with it. Like when they're opening up all of like I don't know, the giant sack, and it's all like gooey and gross, and they bring for, I don't know, is that a head? Is it like an egg? I don't know what they have, but they're like physically carrying it, and they have like slime on them, and they had to cut into it. Like I felt more of a reaction towards that because the actors are showing more towards what they're doing. So I think there's that. Like I can feel that a little more. I can understand what the actors are going through a little more. With CGI, you can't really get that unless you're like a superb actor. But think of how many like bland MCU movies are where like nobody reacts to anything going on in a realistic manner. And I guess I felt that a little bit in 2011, where like it didn't feel like anybody was really reacting to like two faces morphing together, because that's pretty nasty. That's really gross. I feel like I would be screaming a little bit. And everybody here just they didn't even care. Like, but when they see the head in the 80s, they're like, oh, you
what the fuck is that?
Yeah, you have to light that up as soon as you see it, because that is disgusting. And yeah, I felt that a little more. So I think that sort of that sort of experience that you're getting from the actors is totally lost with the CGI. But CGI is also like, I don't know, like the thing is kind of crazier in 2011 in some ways. Like when her whole chest like burst open. Like I know you said that they did that with practical effects too, but like I honestly can't envision how on earth they would have pulled that off. That was weirder. It's a little more insane, a little more twisted. I think you can just do more with CGI, period. But I guess I value the reactions of the actors a little more. So unless you have superb actors, I don't really think it works. Especially if you're supposed to be grossed out by it.
That's a good point. I as a side note, I want to mention that guy who gets the two-face thing happen to him. His name is Eric Christian Olsen, and you might recognize him from Community, where he plays Vaughn in the first season. Remember this?
Yes, I do remember
Annie's
Vaughn.
boyfriend Vaughn.
His boyfriend Vaughn. He's the hacky sack guy.
Yeah.
And his nipples are weird.
Yeah. Pierce, you're a B. You no good B. You're a GDB. Sorry, I think about Vaughn a lot.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about CGI. Like CGI can be kind of anything your imagination can do, right? It's not hampered by physics, by the natural plane.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Mike? What are you thinking?
So I mean, I definitely agree with Jesse that like it impacts the actors. Like funny enough, I just recently watched Eternals. And that's famous for being a movie where the director said, why don't we film outside a few of these scenes?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really great actors in Eternals. Like almost all of them are, I consider really good actors. Like you can definitely see like a difference in the way that they're sort of looking at things in the world.
It seems like they're perceiving the same things we are.
Yeah. Well, it's like they're able to like pick something on the horizon to look at. Rather than just being like, well, there's a green screen that I guess they'll turn into something.
So just so Angelina Jolie. So at this point in the film, you're going to be seeing a very large, sort of larger than life giant in front of you, and I'd like you to react in sort of a mixture of fear and awe.
Yeah, and it's like, well, okay, it's up to their
Action, fear and awe.
No, but so like, perfect.
That's good.
I think that there's like an additional layer to it where it's like I feel like there's an importance to being restrained by by reality in a certain way in like what you're doing. I've been thinking about this question over the last like week and trying to very little, but a little bit. I've been trying to think of like
I've thought about this a very tiny amount. What I've come up with is
I have thought a little bit about it. I've been thinking about like similar remakes or like movies where it's like Lord of the Rings. The first Lord of the Rings trilogy was done very much with Weta Workshop, where they made a lot of physical things. And it's also famous for having a ton of CGI as well. They did both, and they kind of combined the two. And I think that for the most part, it still holds up today. There's parts of it where that looks a little bit like Neo in The Matrix, when he's running around with like all the Agent Smiths, and it's just a bad video game.
Matrix Revolutions, the final fight.
Yeah.
And then,
but
for the most
part,
there's
a Hobbit where Ian McKellen was crying at a table full of dwarves and hobbits, saying this is not how actors should be doing scenes.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's totally bullcrap at that point. It's just green screen. Whereas like I remember like watching like all that stuff about the Return of or the Fellowship of the Ring, where they have to make these duplicate sets and like they're doing all this crazy stuff with camera work and they're physically like putting this stuff together. That's really amazing. Like it's something that I'm filled with awe when I watch, like someone actually took the time to do this. And you could do this. All it takes is time and attention. Whereas like, with CGI, it's like, oh, you got to push the buttons and it's there. There's a skill involved. And I don't mean to say like anything negative about people who do that, but I think that there's something that comes through the camera, both with the actors and with just what you're actually seeing with like true, like real practical effects, that makes it much more real. It slows things down in the movie, like every time. I can't think of a time when it doesn't. And you're like, wow, like in the original Star Wars, they actually created these models and they like blew shit up. And like, that's really cool. I'm a big fan of practical effects. I can't think of a single time when it's like made it better when they moved it to CGI, but I also have a very limited memory. So I don't know. I'm wondering, like, do you have an example of that? Or like,
I think you already provided one. I think you provided Lord of the Rings, like the scale of, for instance, like the Helm's Deep.
It's true. Yeah.
What CGI was able to give us was a sense of scale that we had not really been able to do. Like, we'd have amazing sets for like Braveheart, right? Or Gladiator, although there's a fair amount of CGI in Gladiator.
That's true.
Just more basic and at a distance, so you can't really tell that's what's going on. but it looks a lot different than Spartacus, you know?
Yeah.
And Spartacus still felt big, or like you want to talk about the old Cecil B. DeMille epics like the Ten Commandments, or you want to talk about the greatest story ever told or whatever. Lots of extras can be impressive in a giant set. You know, we have taken over an entire studio and made a city, and we have staffed it with 5,000 people, and that's pretty cool.
But even there, they're like, they have paintings.
Exactly.
Like they use
matte
paintings
in the background
Yeah.
to give you depth of field. And really, there's no difference between a matte painting and a CGI background, except that one actually looks more convincing than the other. And by that, I mean the CGI background.
Yeah.
Like your eye, because so many details are there to focus on, your eye will not perceive that until, you know, like the fifth or sixth viewing. When your eye is actively kind of around the screen looking for something. Or like, let's use a current example that I thought, like Minority Report could not have been possible without CGI. I think it's pretty incredible. I know Jesse's kind of out on it, so I probably should have picked a better one. Even the recent Mission Impossibles, like the fact that Tom Cruise is doing all this crazy stunt work is really helpful. But I mean, not everything he's doing is real.
Or like the Fast.
No, that's a very good argument against CGI. It's using Fast and Furious movies.
A good one is David Fincher. He uses a ton of CGI in his movies, and people don't even know it.
Yeah,
like he'll have an entire scene where the cars and the background and the houses all around the set were CGI, and nobody knows it. And then afterwards, in Zodiac, there's like it was just one piece of it was real. Everything else was CGI, and you can't tell. You just can't tell.
Honestly, I think I'll say that anytime in CGI can and probably should be used anytime the actors don't actually have to be like odd or inspired or have to react to something. But if it's like background stuff, make it CGI. Like, I don't think anybody's going to mind.
Or no, like in Zodiac, again, the memorable scene when the camera is directly above the taxi before the taxi cab driver gets murdered, all CGI, completely CGI. And then the scene where they're investigating that very murder and Mark Ruffalo and Anthony Edwards are standing on the street, you know, trying to divvy up the crime scene. The entire background is CGI. The entire thing, it's a green screen that they set up. All the buildings around them are fake because it needed to look period appropriate. So it is doing great things. But to your point, Mike, practical effects make me feel cozy. They make me buy into this world because, like Jesse was saying, like everyone, like no one is in disagreement about when the actors believe they're in a real world, they'll act more real, right? And like in Lord of the Rings, when you build a set and you dress everyone up in their garb and you have them standing around holding their props, they're like, wow, like this feels like Middle Earth. Like I can actually sink into being Mary. Yeah, there has to be a push back, I think. I think we've just gotten too reliant. There's that recent brilliant expose that came out. I think it was for Vulture about one of the effects houses, one of the effects workers, visual effects artists for an effects house that Marvel employs, kind of came out and gave an anonymous tell-all about what it's like working in the kind of the quote unquote salt mines, and how, you know, Marvel takes inexperienced directors and places them here because they're easy to control, they're easy to boss around. It's actually a nightmare for the effects houses because they have an inexperienced guy who's like, show me the scene fully rendered. And the effects house is like, dude, that's like 3 months of work to get you to show you something to see whether you like it. Like, that's insanity. How are we going to do that?
Yeah.
But then because Marvel is so powerful, they make every contractor come in at the lowest possible bid. So you have tiny effects houses working for almost no money just to get a bid to work on a Marvel movie. It's a terrible industry, and it's actually causing long-lasting repercussions. Like, there's so many effects houses now, but they're all under such crushing demand from so many studios. That's why our movies keep getting pushed. That's another reason why even stuff like video game development has been pushed so far out. Things keep getting delayed, is that we are running out of visual effects and game design artists who know how to make these things.
And probably people that want to even start doing that. Like, who wants to redo all of Sonic?
Yeah.
Make sure his eyes don't look so creepy.
You will be working 80-hour weeks with no overtime.
And it's why... go ahead.
And if you leave the project before the project is finished, you have written into your employment clause, you can't say you even worked on this project. So you got to stay and suffer through so that you get this credit on your resume. Otherwise, what was it all for?
Yeah, and it's why you notice like the passion projects, things where money is not maybe the first goal, or the corporate, capitalism is not the driving force. Those often look incredible. Like you'll see some artsy short film and you're like, this is it. Like, why doesn't every Marvel scene look this good? Or why is it that this random video game that some guy in his basement spent 9 months making, why does that look better than this other, massive like Ubisoft game, or, whatever? It's like, it's because of what you described, where the money is like lowest common denominator, lowest bidder. Like it's a totally upside down industry. It's really strange.
Like the art, the digital art has now been commodified in such a specific way that they can get what is called a AAA kind of certification for bottom level money. And that's what we see in some of our big budget projects when we get this big fight scenes where it does just look like rubber dolls smack at each other. Is because another thing in that expose, I really should try and link it to this episode, is that they mentioned that a lot of the final fight scenes in some of these big Marvel movies are pre-vised and animated prior to a director coming on board to the project.
Really?
It's just dictated. This is what it's going to be. So start working on it now, because this is the biggest.
Get us to the fight scene.
Get us to the fight scene. Make the fight scene. And then when he comes in, he can like have some minor tweaks. But basically, this scene exists outside of the director's vision.
Wow.
Or that really makes Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings make way more sense, because once the fight scene starts, you're like, oh, it's pretty bad. This is really generic.
It looks
different. The floor is very clearly CGI. Why is the floor CGI?
Yeah. It is. It's a really strange way of doing business, and I really hope that it ends. But I think we've talked. I don't think we've come down. I'm not demonizing CGI. It's a beautiful thing.
One last
There's
thing.
a Luddite in me that wants to demonize it and wants to be like, oh, hey, like we should just go back to the days before like we had paintings that we could put in the back. We should have like we shouldn't have massive vistas.
There should be murders on camera.
That's what we need to do. We shouldn't even have cameras. We should be going to see Punch and Judy things in the street. That was real. You know what? Get rid of the puppets.
It's actually Punch and actually Judy.
No,
one last thing, referencing to the whole CGI thing, is Ryan George on his YouTube channel. I think he does this like what it takes to be a CGI artist comedy sketch. It's pretty funny. You should look it up. It's just a guy in his tiny, dirty apartment, like working 80-hour weeks, like working on crotches and stuff. Pretty great. I can't remember what I was going to say in regards to CGI, other than like, I don't know. Like, it seems like
it's just a lot of crotches.
It's many crotches. And it's just too overused. I think filmmakers tend to get lazier when they're using it, instead of, because it seems like, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like the camera used to work different back in the day by necessity. It's like sometimes creativity is found more in the constraints that you have and trying to pull something off rather than just being given the ultimate freedom.
That's a great. I mean, like any movie you make on a green screen, you say, we'll fix it in post, right? We'll fix it in post.
That's what we say on this show.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, fix it in pre.
I mean,
fix it before you need to fix it.
Like the examples we've given, Jurassic Park, the original, and Lord of the Rings, they approached it as, let's do as much practical as we can and as many miniatures as we can. And then we'll do CGI as kind of a last resort, or if we can't do anything else. And those are huge successes, right? Everybody agrees, like the CGI in Jurassic Park holds up to today. And same with Lord of the Rings, even though, it doesn't look as flashy, or they didn't have as, fancy as tools and everything. It still looks great.
It's believable. It's believable.
Yeah.
It's grounded, right? It's grounded in reality. And that's what I think the people that are like 100% CGI forget, is that it has to be grounded in reality. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to make something look real, and practical effects are real, right? Yeah, they might not look 100%, but they're always going to be like 95% because they are real, right? It's going to look a little off, but it's still real. And so CGI is like more of, it should be more like a cleanup tool. Like let's get us that extra 5%. Let's not try to do the entire 100% CGI. Let's just like use CGI to add a little more, like clean up the edges. And I was going to mention there's a YouTube channel that I love called Corridor Crew, where they do these like VFX artists react to a bunch of different scenes in movies and in shows and everything. And they do a whole episode on The Thing and the effects in there that I really like. They just recently did an episode where they partnered with Adam Savage, and they did a scene from
the guy from Mythbusters, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. The white-haired guy from Mythbusters. That's just awesome. And they redid a scene. I'm going to forget what scene it is. It's a scene where this guy has a switchblade in his nostril and it like gets sliced. Chinatown. Yes. And they basically did like a competition where Adam Savage did it practically, and then they did it with CGI, and they already knew the answer, which was the best thing is if we combine our efforts and make the scene with both. And they did that, and it was like, yeah, it's obvious that this is the best way. So that's the easiest answer is like, oh, well, use both. I also want to say like they talk about the new Avatar trailer. There's a lot of like discussion about the VFX in that, and how real they look. And there's actually like debates about what parts of the trailer are real and which ones are VFX. Cause
that's kind of cool.
They look so real. And it's the water in there. People are debating online right now about whether the water in there is real water or CGI water. And I think that's awesome. Like if we can't even tell the difference.
Didn't James Cameron sink Kate Winslet in water for like 6 minutes, and she had to like hold her breath for 6 minutes to get some shots? I remember like an interview with her on that. No. This is for Avatar.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So it's real.
Some of it.
Some of it's real. And that's the debate. But yeah, like certain scenes, right? They like the CGI has gotten to a point. I don't want to say that it's like now it's reached a level of maturity. I think it's always going to be limited. It's always going to need to be grounded in reality. And
for $250 million, maybe you can't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that.
I am too.
I have one last thing to say about this is like, I think we were hard pressed to come up with an example where it seemed like CGI would have done better. But there was this one story I remember from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where Quentin Tarantino was given this example. It's when Cliff, Brad Pitt's character, he drives off to his home and he lives behind a theater and there's a bunch of cars parked right there. And they told him, like, we could do this with miniatures, or we could, like, the cars with the theater in miniatures, or we could do it in CGI. And they're like, the CGI is going to be way cheaper. It's like, oh, let's just go with miniatures. It's like, well, but like, they're like, you won't be able to really tell the difference. It's like a 5-second scene. It'll be a lot of work to put out all these miniatures and like create this whole set. And he's like, I'll go with miniatures. But like, at the end of the day, I think it would have looked fine in CGI.
I just imagined Quentin like narrating that story. Yeah, okay. So I was given, like, they said miniatures CGI, right?
Obviously, miniatures.
Interspersed with like really loud laughter, and if you try and interrupt him, he'll just get louder and louder until you just shut up.
I feel like one of the cool
and I think that's the thing about Quentin
Tarantino is a little kid playing with toys. And so obviously he's going to choose the miniature cars. Like that's one of the cool things about old movies. It's little kids playing with toys.
And he grew up with The Thing, right? Like The Thing is one thing about The Thing is that it is a classic and a cult classic, but only amongst people that love film, like specifically love film. The average viewer, in my experience, nobody's seen The Thing. like nobody in my immediate circles or nobody that is a casual movie viewer has seen The Thing or cares about it, or if they watched it would like it. And yet everybody that is really into movies is really into The Thing. And that's something so interesting to me. I think it speaks to the level of expertise that it took to make it, and how, yeah, like, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I think so, and I think it's just one of those movies where, unless you're like a real genre head, right? You're not going to have a reason to watch The Thing, except if you want to see how it's made, right? Like, you got to either be really into horror and sci-fi, or you have to be really into just watching how movies are made to really even want to watch this movie, right? Because it's super gross. It's pretty violent. There's not a lot of, human characters that do things that are endearing. There's not a lot of reasons why, for example, you would want to sit down and watch this as a date night movie, unless you're both already sold on something about the content, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a very approachable movie. It's not a very likable movie, honestly. It's not interested in whether or not you like it. No, it doesn't really care what you think about it. And the ending really plays into that. Okay, I think we need to wrap this up, but Jesse did have a question about the ending. I think that we must talk about the ending of The Thing.
Yeah. So at the end of this, I was like, I really wanted to know where everybody stands on the ending. Like, who is somebody the Thing? Are neither of them the Thing? Are both of them the Thing? Does it matter? And one thing that I was thinking about is that maybe it doesn't even matter if one of them is the Thing, because it seems like the nature of the Thing is to be like divided and psychological. So, the Thing wants to take other people and kind of like divide them into its own little bits and pieces in its own cells, right? But it also tries to do that psychologically. So it's already kind of one at the end because they're divided against one another.
And even if it freezes, it doesn't care about if it freezes. It won't die. It can freeze. It just can't burn.
To freeze. Yeah.
Yeah. Put me into hibernation. Let's just wait till someone else finds me. It's okay.
I think that's the strongest argument for them, one of them or both of them being the Thing, is the fact that they mention, like, we can't let this thing just hibernate. We can't just bury it in the snow and then die. That means that somebody's going to find it when they come looking for us. Like, that means it wins. And I think it is it.
I think the only thing that we can say, I think the only thing we can say definitively is it's not both of them.
Well, that would be strange.
Here's the only thing I can say in favor of the both of them argument. It seems like if one of them, I think they both had the flamethrowers, right? Yep. If one of them knew for sure that they were not the Thing, they could have just burned the other.
But we don't know if you can know if you're not the Thing.
Right.
It's not a piece of information that we have as an audience.
Yeah, like in the scene where they're all sitting there, like trying to figure out who's the Thing. Everyone's freaking out thinking that they might be the Thing.
Yeah.
Or they're freaking out thinking that, like...
Or they're acting really well. You don't... It's really hard to tell.
Yeah.
That's what's really beautiful about it. So another thing is that Carpenter has confirmed that there is tricks that he used with lights in reflections in their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
If but there's also,
it was strange. I did go back and I did look at this, and McCready's eyes are not really glowing through most of the movie.
It's very strange.
It's very strange. And it's also very strange that there is like literal evidence pointing to him maybe having been taken over by the Thing.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Yeah, so what?
It's also very weird that he decides to kill the Thing at the end. Like, maybe because the Thing is so divided, it doesn't care if it kills like its other self. I don't know. Maybe it actually is at war with itself. Who knows?
So that was his coat that they found, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
How could it have gotten there?
Because there's a couple people that had access to McCready's cabin. Yeah.
Who's the guy with the silhouette in the very beginning? We're never given that explanation.
Isn't that the dog guy?
The dog guy he has access to the thing like even earlier though,
Yeah.
for an hour or two.
And he
And
is
he's
not
cleared.
a thing.
Right,
Yeah,
he's cleared with the blood test.
Oh, that's weird.
He just wanted to be the thing wanted to be the dogs.
Yeah.
Nelson
So,
McCready
okay.
was clear through the blood test too, but he's the one giving it.
But it's clear it does work.
Yeah.
But maybe
Yeah.
it wasn't his. I don't know.
Maybe it wasn't his blood. Maybe he didn't heat it up enough. I don't know.
So let's do this. Let's do this. So let's return back to the ending. I don't think it's both. I think it's one or the other, but I definitely think it's one. I think that for it to be neither is needlessly hopeless. I would like to believe it's one. Is where I'm at. Where are you at?
I think it's got to be one of them. Yeah. One of them has to not be the thing.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm inclined to think that it's McCready that isn't the thing.
I mean, I would like to think that.
I'm inclined to think that because, like, why else would he have, like, if he was the thing, then he was destroying himself several times throughout the movie.
To make sure that
from the point he would have turned.
To make sure that he, the ultimate thing, would definitely survive.
I suppose that's possible.
I mean, maybe he's playing the long game.
Yeah, but
how smart
chess.
is the thing? Yeah.
Like, yeah, what if the thing operates in the same way they're all operating with each other throughout the whole movie, where so, like, well, we talked about, like, how John Carpenter is actually maybe more of an optimist than he seems, and maybe the more optimistic approach is the thing is actually at war with itself. It's poisoning everybody psychologically the way it itself is already poisoned. It's always at war. Like, people are sick, right? When they, at least some guy's actually sick when he's the thing, and that's why they do the CPR thing or whatever. But, like, how on earth could that have happened but his body wasn't functioning properly because the thing's not really working. Doesn't actually want to be attached to itself.
So maybe it's depressed and it needs therapy.
That's in that case, it should have let the defibrillator hit it, electroshock, you know. No, or maybe like the thing looks down on other things that are not as sneaky as it, right? Like if a thing outs itself, maybe that means everything in that vicinity turns on it, right? Like you are endangering all of us by getting loud. Like we will have to put you down just like everyone else so that we seem clear. I don't know.
I think John Carpenter would be like very not amused by this conversation.
John Carpenter, like, I think he said he did know. He's not going to tell anybody.
He did have something in mind.
Yeah, I think he knows.
So he just like sits down in his house, like in his mansion. Every once in a while, turns on the thing. He gets to the end. He's like, yeah. Everyone wonders how this is. It's like, no.
It's so easy. I know it. Just like how Christopher Nolan has the extended cut of Inception that's 10 seconds longer.
Yeah.
Does he really?
If I was Christopher Nolan, I totally would.
That asshole. Oppenheimer looks really great.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. We were just, never mind.
Well, okay, gentlemen, we got to call a stop to this birthday episode. We've run over, but I'm very happy that on this one we did decide to run over. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Thank you for watching it. Thank you for talking about it. I appreciate your guys' time and attention, as always. Great birthday present to me, that time and attention. I appreciate you all.
Thanks for choosing these movies.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everyone. From all of us at Not Your Father's Movies, I'm Vito.
I'm Mike.
I'm Dan.
I'm Jesse.